Hello and welcome. It is noon on the 7th day of October. You can see the ghost is still here because of the weird haze in that corner there. Support me, Smart Water, though you do not, in fact, make me any smarter. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM, and today, to continue with our spooky Spooktober Spooktacular, with the spookiness, we are addressing the time-honored question, can you, in fact, run scary in role-playing? Now, this is not, are there horror role-playing games? There are. And I'm not saying, are there systems in place to emulate horror? There are. There are things like fear points and insanity points and make saving throws and stuff like that. There's very mechanical ways to run horror. But can you really run horror in a role-playing game engine? As a GM, I've tried. I've never been able to do it. Usually because there's so many tools available to a character in a role-playing setting that trying to create a horror-related theme is sort of just thrown to the side when, a guy can just cast light spell an infinite number of times or shoot flames down the hallway or whatever. Role-playing characters are just intrinsically tougher than characters in a movie or TV. You can't really do a jump scare in a role-playing game. Can you? I mean, I've never done it. And as a player, I've only ever been in one game where I truly felt scared for my character. And that was only through various circumstances. And the GM was just so well done. And it was just such a, unique story, though I later found out that GM was running the plot from it. Though at the time I didn't know it was the plot from it. I thought they had made it all up. But then later on, I was like, oh, wait, that game was just it. Oh, man! But the DM in question, she did it so well that a group of 5, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds sitting at a table were able to separate themselves from the mechanics of rolling dice, sitting in this room, eating snacks, laughing, it's well lit, and become scared. That was a one-time thing, and never since then have I been in a situation where I felt like, okay, I'm really scared. I felt like, oh, okay, I guess this is happening to my character, so how would my character react? I guess I'm scared. Or, oh, I failed my saving throw, so I got things, mechanics have been activated that make me act in a certain way. Most recently, I was in a Lovecraftian scenario, and the GM was trying their hardest to make that emotion clear of what being in this Lovecraftian type scenario would be like. But then it just inevitably breaks down to the saving throw. It's very hard because other people are making, dick jokes about the tentacles. And, he's trying to say, well, this is how you feel. And I'm like, well, I don't really know. I mean, I don't feel that. Mike does not feel that. So how do I express that in my character who, is taking damage and is technically, failing saving throws? Sure, the mechanics are in place, but I'm just playing the mechanics. So again, what could that individual have done to make it more scary? What can we do as DMs to make situations more like we see in the movies? Well, we can't. We can't make it seem like what you see in scary movies because scary movies are scripted. The actors aren't scared. They're acting. That's not a real guy in the closet trying to kill you. It's Steve wearing a mask. Or nowadays, it's not even Steve wearing a mask. It's a ping pong ball on a stick with a yellow dot on it. And you're reacting to that ping pong ball. So, yeah, can you do horror? And what tricks can we do horror? Obviously, music. Music helps to set the mode a lot. Oh, cat's playing. Lighting, visual cues. using words instead of saying things. I've repeated the, cow story hundreds and hundreds of times of how, by never actually saying cow, we were all scared. Now, this wasn't a horror scenario, but we were all scared by a cow in a scenario where we shouldn't have been scared, but just because of the way everything played out. But as opposed to when I was playing through the It scenario, of course, again, didn't know it was it. It was a horror scenario. We knew going in it was a horror scenario. And still, despite everything on our character sheets, and still despite the fact we're in a brightly lit room, and still despite the fact there's joking on and snacks, and we were able to give ourselves permission to be scared. So you can't really emulate a movie because a movie is scripted. They're acting. But there are tricks that movies use. There's tricks that haunted houses use that you could use as a storyteller, because the storytelling tricks are still there for telling a scary story. Now, jump scares, blood, gore, I don't know if you could do that. I mean, you could, but really the best way to do a jump scare in a role-playing scenario is to have somebody else on the outside who is cued to come up and, jump scare somebody at the table at the exact moment. But that's a lot of work. But it could be done. But there's still tools in place in collective storytelling that we could use, but everybody at the table has to agree to use them. So the only reason why the times I've been as a player at a table where scary worked is because everybody agreed we were going to be part of this experiment. If people don't agree, if people don't invest, if you're trying to, like my friend very recently, run a Lovecraftian-esque scenario where a character like myself was being, placed in a tentacle rape, Lovecraftian horror type scenario. Well, it's not very horrible if there's people making dick jokes and quoting movies and saying, "Oh, you got ugly fast, baby," and "I'll be back," and, talking about the debates, or, one person making it very obvious, "Oh, I want to suck your dick, DM." So my experience was lessened because the other people did not agree that this was the experience we were going to share. So I didn't feel any connection. I didn't feel any scare. I didn't feel any threat. I was like, oh, I took 30 points of damage. Big deal. On my next round, I can mechanic, and get myself out of this if I'm still alive. And if I'm not still alive, oh well, it's fucking 5th edition. It's impossible to die in 5th edition. What's going to happen? I'm at 0 hit points. Oh, I get 3 death saves. And even then, if I fail those, there's like 1,000,001 ways for me to come back. So I'm not scared because nobody dies in 5e. So the Lovecraftian scenario was ruined, A, by the mechanics. It's hard to be scared when I can drop a fireball. And B, because nobody else at the table agreed that we were telling a Lovecraftian horror story. It only works, it only can work, the only times I've seen it work as an individual, and I'm just speaking about myself, your mileage may vary, is when everybody at the table have agreed to that story and the rules of that story. And once you agree to the rules of the story, the tricks are in place, from simple storytelling, simple script writing, to tell a scary story. We love scary stories. We love to sit around at a fire and tell ghost stories. And sitting around at a fire and telling ghost stories, even for fucking adults, works even if a brightly lit room, because everybody at the table, everybody around the fire agrees to tell a ghost story. And when they agree, when the dick jokes and the offsides and the stupidity is put aside, and we embrace that inner childhood, we embrace that inner suspension of disbelief, we embrace the fact that, oh my God, she's running from the scream monster when really there's like 27 different things she could do to stop the guy. Look, there's a fucking knife, stab him. No, but we forgive that because that's the rules. And if everybody had accepted the rules, the scenario I was recently in with a Lovecraftian encounter would have been way more scarier. But, it wasn't, because nobody accepted the rules. The only reasons the horror games I have in work, the only reasons the horror games I have seen work is because everybody at the table accepts the rules of horror. And once you accept that rules, then the simple tricks, lighting, music, imagery through voice, collective unconsciousness, collective storytelling, collective investment, collective sharing of that scary scenario makes it work. So bottom line, it can work in the mechanics of role-playing games, and there are mechanics in place to role-play fear and terror and insanity. You know, you fail a saving throw, you take 1 point of corruption, or you take a point of insanity, or you're now under the effects of a confusion spell. Those mechanics are there and they're fine. But again, you have to accept the reality of horror for horror to work. So there you go. Hopefully you appreciate this content, and if you do, comment down below. Let me know you love me by sharing and subscribing, and if you're feeling generous, maybe, you could support me. Whatever, happy Halloween. I'll talk to you spooky later. I should probably see what that phone call was about.